Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving right into a fascinating investigation. We're opening the dossier on why a massive, icy territory with just 57,000 people has suddenly become the absolute center of a global superpower tug-of-war. We'll be unpacking the findings of Trump in Greenland, the new rush for raw materials, looking closely at this fierce battle over land, critical minerals, and ultimately, the future of our climate.
We've got to start with this chilling Greenlandic word. It literally translates to a sea with no ice. Pretty terrifying if you're a local hunter, right? Because the reality is, the Arctic is currently warming 2 to 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And as that ice melts, it's triggering a stark, scary new reality for the people living there. But paradoxically, it's also opening up brand new shipping routes and exposing vast mineral wealth underneath, which brings an entirely new set of threats right to the island shores.
And that melting ice leads us directly to the big, massive geopolitical question that totally exploded into the global news cycle. When Donald Trump made bold, unprecedented declarations in 2019 and 2024 about wanting to purchase Greenland, it sounded like a wild joke to a lot of people at first. But actually, it completely flipped the script on international relations and exposed a very real, very intense rush for the Arctic.
Okay, here is our game plan for today. We'll cover 1. The core conflict. 2. Geopolitical strategy and history. 3. The Greenlandic perspective. 4. The mining debate. 5. The wider geopolitical shift. And finally, 6. The true value of Greenland.
Let's jump straight into Section 1, the core conflict, a superpower tug-of-war. We're looking at a battle over an island the size of Western Europe that is currently trapped right between global ambitions.
Former President Trump really threw gas on the fire when he declared that ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. He wasn't just throwing ideas around. He was openly questioning Denmark's legal sovereignty and framing Greenland purely as a vital U.S. national security asset. This incredibly blunt approach changed the entire conversation overnight, turning quiet geopolitical maneuvering into a very open, very public tug-of-war.
But you know, the U.S. definitely wasn't the first to look north. Let's move to Section 2, Geopolitical Strategy and History, a Century of Ambition.
Washington has actually viewed Greenland as a strategic prize for well over a century. Check out this timeline. We're talking U.S. efforts to purchase it dating all the way back to the 1860s. During World War II, it was an absolutely crucial pit stop for planes flying from the U.S. to the U.K. And get this, in 1946, President Truman literally offered Denmark $100 million in solid gold for it. Why? Well, during the Cold War, the absolute shortest trajectory for a nuclear missile between the U.S. and the Soviet Union was right over the Arctic.
Fast forward to today, and the Arctic is practically a new frontier again. For U.S. security experts, the big fear is that America is falling behind the curve. Russia sees itself as the king of the Arctic, reopening old Soviet-era military bases and aggressively militarizing the space. And meanwhile, China has completely integrated the far north into its Polar Silk Road initiative. With the ice melting, those sea lands are swinging wide open, and superpowers are just racing to fill the void.
Now, amid all this talk of military bases and shipping routes, we absolutely cannot ignore the people who actually live there. That brings us to Section 3, the Greenlandic perspective and the price of independence.
For local leaders and activists, this sudden superpower spotlight is a real double-edged sword. It's both a platform and a threat. For decades, Greenlanders have been fighting for independence from Denmark. They carry some incredibly heavy, painful colonial history, which includes deeply traumatic forced contraception campaigns in the 1960s, where the Danish healthcare system targeted thousands of Greenlandic women just to control the population. Because of that awful history, they absolutely refuse to be treated as pawns on a global chessboard. They simply want to be Greenlanders.
But as we all know, wanting independence and actually affording it are two totally different things. To stand on their own 2 feet as a true sovereign nation, Greenland has to figure out a way to replace a staggering 54% of its national budget. Right now, more than half of their money comes from outside sources, mostly block grants from Denmark and funding from the European Union. In replacing that kind of cash, it's incredibly tough because they're facing some severe economic bottlenecks. Right now, a whopping 90% of their exports are tied entirely to the fishing industry. On top of that, there's a massive infrastructure gap. I'm talking no central power grid. There isn't even a central network of roads connecting the towns. If you want to go somewhere, you have to hop on a ship or a plane. So to survive and pay their own way, They're basically forced to look underground to attract external investment. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the mining debate and the rare earth dilemma.
This is where things get really heated. On one side of the debate, you've got corporations and some politicians looking at an absolute El Dorado of critical minerals, stuff we desperately need for the global green energy transition and Western defense systems. Minerals that could break China's monopoly on the supply chain and give Greenland a century of immense profits. But on the flip side, local farmers, fishers, and environmental activists are sounding the alarm. A lot of these deposits contain uranium. Locals are terrified that radioactive waste and dust are going to blow right into the ocean and completely wipe out their traditional farming and fishing livelihoods. It's a massive gamble.
So, as the U.S. pushes hard for territorial control and Greenland hotly debates its natural resources, we arrive at Section 5, the wider geopolitical shift and fracturing alliances.
The diplomatic fallout here is massive. The U.S. approach has triggered a worldwide ripple effect. Look at France. President Emmanuel Macron actually traveled all the way to Greenland's capital to make it crystal clear that European land is not a purchasable commodity. Meanwhile, Denmark, usually one of the closest U.S. allies, is now pivoting to buy French and Italian ground-based air defense systems instead of American Patriot missiles. And in a totally bizarre twist, Russian President Vladimir Putin hypothetically agreed with the idea of the U.S. taking Greenland. Why? Because if superpowers can just rewrite international borders and buy territories at will, it completely shatters the post-World War II rules-based order, and that fits Russia's own territorial ambitions perfectly.
To show you just how serious this shift really is, Danish politicians are now openly admitting that the aggressive push for Greenland is fundamentally eroding trust within NATO. Think about it. When a key ally tries to essentially claim your territory, the foundation of that military alliance starts to crumble. And what does that do? It sparks a sudden, rapid militarization of the Arctic that literally nobody wanted just a few years ago.
Finally, we arrive at our concluding chapter, Section 6, the true value of Greenland and the ultimate climate stakes. As geoscientist Paul Bierman so powerfully points out, while politicians and corporations fight tooth and nail over the minerals buried beneath the surface, the real, fragile treasure of Greenland is sitting right on top, the ice itself. It's a massive, natural regulator for our planet's climate, and it is in grave danger.
Now, the number 7 here is truly terrifying. If Greenland's ice sheet melts, and remember what we said earlier, the Arctic is warming up to 4 times faster than the rest of the globe, it will raise the global sea level by up to 7 meters.
Let's put that into perspective, because this translates to an unimaginable human catastrophe. A 7-meter sea level rise means 500 million people worldwide would be displaced. 500 million! Entire island nations, like the Maldives, would simply sink. We're talking economic losses running into the trillions of dollars. If you think global migration is a complex issue today, just imagine 500 million people suddenly having to pick up and move. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly vital question to chew on. The people of Greenland are on the absolute front lines of a climate transformation that is going to impact every single one of us. So, in this frantic, geopolitical rush for raw materials, military dominance, and economic wealth, are we completely sacrificing the very ice that keeps our world afloat? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.